Right, UFC 299, way better than UFC 300. This is what the 300 card should have been. But if you don't know me already, I don't really like WMMA. I don't really like to do it, but I'm going to do it for this one event. And starting off with this fight, I'm going with Maryna and Morozov to win via decision. I can't trust Joanne win. Joanne would. Very basic type of fighter. Both of them are. They're both cans. But if I'm picking one of them to win, I'm going to go with Moroz by using clinching, boring groundwork on the ground with Joanne Wood, and she'll look like a fish out of water and not know what to do. And I don't think she'll get the submission because even though Joanne Wood's been submitted multiple times, I think Maryna Moroz is more of a holder. Yes, she can do jiu-jitsu, but Joanne Calderwood, her boxing and staying on the outside is what she's going to be looking to do the whole fight. And I think she's going to make it a very boring fight to open the card, but it will improve. Assu Almabayev versus CJ Vergara. This guy made me a lot of money back in the day. I went all in on him against Ode Osborne, and he delivered, and he deserves to be a heavy favourite. He was like a slight favourite in the last fight. And CJ Vergara, very worrying. Like, honestly, I've got to go with Assu Almabayev. How will he do it? Can he submit CJ Vergara? I think he can, but some things that he can do is lose control on the ground. And if I look at guys like CJ Vergara when he was against Tyra, he can slow down. He can start off quite well, but slow down. So I think I'm going to predict a round 2 submission by Almabayev on Vergara. He'll struggle to do anything with the takedowns. Vergara's striking will look better, but when Assu Almabayev keeps taking you down, your gas tank's going to wear out. Vergara's not got the best cardio. He will end up losing that fight. And you might be like, oh, he beat Vinicius Salvador. That was a weird type of matchup because Salvador's looking to strike and swing with no technique about him. So when he fights a guy like that, it's inevitable that he's going to win. A guy who swings against a guy who can box but doesn't really knock that many people out. Like, he knocked out Daniel Lacerda, but I think most people could do that. And he was lucky to survive that first round. You all know that against Daniel Lacerda, the can of the UFC. He's not CM Punk bad. Well, maybe he is, but he'd beat CM Punk. But anyways, and somehow he got the split decision, which was a rubbery battle, so don't look at that. Assu Almabayev, I'm confident that he should win this fight comfortably. I cannot pronounce this guy's name. Robelis Despaigne versus Josh Parisian. No one is picking this guy, I'm sorry. You've got to go with Despaigne. And I know the hype about him, you're going to be like, oh, Josh Parisian, he don't really get TKO'd. But after his last fight, he looked like he needed a way out of it, so I'm going with a KO for Despaigne first round. I think everyone's pretty much going for a first round KO with him. Like the last fight, how can you end a fight in I believe 4 seconds, 3 seconds? This was the longest it went, but it doesn't usually last more than a round, and it's got an extremely long reach. Like that reach was not human-like. Josh Parisian struggled with the range with, what was his name, Martin Boudet, because he was just getting popped against the cage. Like, Shamil Gaziev did to Boudet what Boudet did to Parisian, and Robelis would do it 10 times worse, but with the most power that he has faced. He faced Jamal Pose, who's a pillow fister. I'm joking, not a pillow fister, he's a heavyweight. But he don't hit hard for a heavyweight. This guy does. He's dropping people with one punch. So it's inevitable that he's going to get a KO. The only thing I would worry about is Parisian. He can't really wrestle, but he can clinch. And if he looks to hold on to him, and Despagne's takedown defense isn't on point, that could be an issue. And somehow Parisian could end up winning a decision, which I doubt, but that's the only concern. But honestly, I think he's going to get KO. This fight, huge mismatch. Kickboxer as well, Taekwondo, very good kicking ability, has power with his hands. Horrible matchup for Parisian. Right, this fight here, it might surprise you of who I'm going with. I'm not going with Ion Cutelaba. His fight IQ is not good enough, and both of them don't have the greatest fight IQ, but I think he's got a tendency where he will make stupid mistakes and end up in positions he shouldn't be. Like, how are you getting submitted by Johnny Walker when you are the wrestler who's meant to be superior on the ground? Johnny Walker's bigger, okay, but you're meant to be this good grappler, but he's overrated, and I think Lins, will he win via decision? Nah, I think when you beat a guy like Cutelaba, you're going to have to knock him out because he rushes in way too wild, leaves his chin wide open to get countered, and yes, he got a finish over Tanabosa, which is still shocking to think he just ran through him, but Tanabosa is a guy who you could also think should be fighting maybe at middleweight he's too small. Like, he's small for heavyweight. Lin's is big enough. He looks big. Like, frame-wise, yeah, maybe not too tall. But Iron Cutelaba, yeah, they're about the same height. But he looks like a middleweight. You're putting a middleweight against a guy who looks like he's a heavyweight in the cage. What do you think's going to happen? Iron Cutelaba not having the greatest chin. I'm going with a round 1 knockout for Philipe Lins. Iron Cutelaba, I think he's going to struggle to just hug him because Lins can do that. Lins has showed in fights like where, especially in the Grins fight, where he can grab you and push you against the cage. So if you think he's just going to run in there, double leg like he likes to do it to every opponent, I think he's going to struggle because of the weight disadvantage. So yeah, he'll struggle and then end up getting knocked out on the feet. Right, Michel Pereira versus Oleksiejczuk. Honestly, I'm going with Pereira to win the fight via decision. And you might think that's dumb because Pereira's cardio has not looked great at all. It has looked shocking at times, but what I think he'll mix up in this fight, which he should do more, is mix up the wrestling, because you will struggle to knock out a guy like Michel Anjos. Like, his defense is relatively alright. He doesn't really get clipped and like rocked and wobbled. He's one of those fighters where a lot of fighters want to bring him down, or if they're going to strike with him, they struggle to go toe to toe because he's got a chin. He will tend to keep coming forward, and if you try and bring him down to the ground, he'll always look to be offensive compared to defensive. Like, sometimes he won't defend takedowns, he'll look to do damage, and that's got its own risk and reward. But I think because he won't be looking to defend takedowns and looking to be like all offense, trying to land elbows against the cage, Michel Pereira is going to start wrestling, bring him down to the ground and start landing ground and pound. But I don't think he'll finish him. I think he's got the power to do it, but I think Oleksiejczuk, his style, will be like trying to walk him down whilst Pereira's trying to, like, he won't dance around the cage and all that. He don't do that foolishness anymore. I liked watching it, but it don't work when you get into like the higher rankings. And he should be fighting a ranked opponent really, but I just think he's a better opponent than Anjos. Like, Jacek's decent, but he hasn't got the takedown defense. And if Michel Pereira is smart, he should know he can mix them up and just coast the way to a decision. I think he's going to win the fight 30-27 because I just don't think Anjos's takedown defense will work well against a guy like Pereira, because Pereira's striking is also very powerful as well. Like, bouncing on the toes. Yeah, he gets tired quickly. So no, I'm wrong. Ignore 30-27. So 29-28. I think he'll throw away the third round due to being a bit more tired. But apart from that, I think his striking, especially his power, will cause problems but not knock him out, and they'll set up the takedowns. So yeah. Right, Pedro Munhoz versus Phillips. I'm sorry, but I have to go with Pedro Munhoz to win this via decision. And I know he's an older bantamweight, but just because he's an older bantamweight, it doesn't mean I can't pick him. Like, usually I wouldn't. But Pedro Munhoz is a guy who's hanged around with a lot of these other guys. He's more experienced than Phillips. Phillips is only starting to get into his stride. And I look at the win, especially against Barcelos, and I thought, there's a lot of things that Pedro Munhoz could do. Phillips don't really move his head a lot. He throws a lot of kicks. Pedro Munhoz, he throws the leg kicks, whereas Phillips is throwing kicks above the upper body and to the body. So I believe even if Phillips tries to adapt and throw like low leg kicks, Munhoz will keep them, he will check them, and he will come forward with overhands, and he will not be able to take him down because 1, Munhoz has got good takedown defense. 2, he's got a very strong guillotine that will prevent opponents wanting to shoot on him over and over and over again. Because if you do, you'll get caught in that tight guillotine choke. And if you do get caught in that guillotine choke, this fight is over. So I think it'll be a stand-up battle on the feet where Pedro Munhoz will do more damage. He's been in fights where some people would call them a robbery. I know he did kind of like, what's the word? Try and get out of the fight with O'Malley. But again, he has good leg kicks, even if that happened in the fight. And you could argue he beat Marlon Vera. Like, he was being more active at times on the feet against him. But it was just that the fact that Marlon Vera was hitting clean with that jab. And that might have been why he was given the win. So, Phillips, I know he dropped Raoni Barcelos, which looks good on paper, but I believe Christian Quinones did it as well. And Raoni Barcelos is getting old now. Pedro Munhoz is getting old, but he's not getting beaten up in every fight. He's looking good. in recent fights against guys like Chris Gutierrez as well. So yeah, I've got to go with him. Mateusz Gamrot versus Rafael dos Anjos. Thank God they didn't put this on like an Apex card and make this like a main event, because that would just be disappointing. It's one of those fights where it's like they're just doing it to add a number on the card, and this is called a stat pad for Mateusz Gamrot. The only thing I worry about is if he can't get dos Anjos down, because if he struggles to get him down and it becomes a striking battle, I'm very confident that dos Anjos could beat him, because dos Anjos, he wasn't getting beaten up with the boxing on the feet against, what was his name? With Luque. The problem with that was the weight. It weren't actually completely a skill issue. It's the fact that he was not big enough to be fighting at that weight class. He's coming up against guys who look like they could be 180, and he looks very small, and he can't do his grappling game plan, which you need to have a good weight for. So, Mateusz Gamrot, this is a good fight for him, because I believe he'll just keep shooting on dos Anjos, and as he's shooting in on dos Anjos, he can be taken down in fights. Like, Michael Chiesa was out grappling him. But then again, you're going to be like, oh, it's Michael Chiesa who can fight at welterweight, but he can also fight at lightweight. And he struggles against bigger guys, is one thing I've noticed. And Mateusz Gamrot is not overly huge. So I think it will be competitive, but I think Gamrot will win this fight 29-28. I think the first round could be a bit of a toss-up, or like the third one, because Gamrot's like Colby at times, shooting in with volume, keep shooting in, shoot, and never stop. But with dos Anjos being a southpaw, he's going to have to attack that single leg, because if he keeps going for a double leg, I think he'll get tired. Even though I know he's got good cardio, you've got to remember that dos Anjos, on the ground, he's hard to just hug and hold. He'll keep moving and look for a better position, and he fights pretty much everyone, so he's got experience. Yeah, and I'm not really a fan of WWE MMA, but I'll do it for this one card. Katin Kuchakian, I don't know how to pronounce it. This is Macy Barber. Macy Barber should win on paper, but I actually think... Right, let me think smart here. I honestly do believe that Kuchakian will win this fight via decision. I think her height, even though she hasn't got like an extremely long reach, I think taking down taller guys is much harder than smaller guys, because they've usually got a stronger base in that to hold themselves up. And Macy Barber, you look at the people she's getting a split decision with, like Andre Lee, really? Of all people, you're going to get a split against her. And she did win her last fight against Amanda Ribas by just pure domination with the control on the ground in a certain round. But Kuchakian's someone who you can get her down, and once you get her down, then you can start to do well with your control. But it's all about getting the takedown, and I think she'll struggle. Purely based on the range management of Kuchakian, the way how she's able to stay on the outside and use like that sniper-like boxing with good accuracy. I think that's going to be a problem and start touching at Macy Barber in the face. Right, Curtis Blaydes versus Jailton Almeida. Jailton Almeida's worth the hype, but I really think he should move down to light heavyweight. Like, this is a very bad matchup. I am surprised by the amount of people picking. I'm going with Blaydes to win via first round KO. Because Jailton Almeida, no, you know what, round two. Because Jailton Almeida's style is about, let me get this takedown, front kick, either double leg or just straight into a double leg, bring you down to the ground. And then, I don't want to talk about the Derek Lewis fight. That was just so boring to watch and just ruined his value. Lay on top of him and just throw some like weak punches. That doesn't impress me that much. Like Curtis Blaydes has fought a lot of the guys in the division. He would cause a lot of bad matchups for certain fighters. Shouldn't have beat Tom Aspinall, I'm joking, it was an injury. But you'll notice that he's got a good takedown defense rate. And you'll notice he's got alright takedown defense. And don't say that Volkov brought him down, that Volkov got ragdoll in that fight. 15 takedowns, or like 14 or 15 takedowns. So I don't want to hear that debate, please, and say that, oh, Jailton Almeida should be able to run through him just because he did. One thing I'll say about Curtis Blaydes is he's big. He's one of these wrestlers where he doesn't do like significant ground and pound. He's more of like, you'll just let me hug you on the ground. But if I can get a knockout, I might go for it. But a lot of the time he doesn't, and he just stays on the feet striking, doesn't mix up the grappling. And against Rosenstrike, when we saw him fight him, just lies on top of him. I think there will be a moment in the fight where Almeida's looking for a takedown, Blaydes defends, but then he's able to actually initiate the grappling on the ground, and that's where I think he will end up losing. Because Blaydes has got power, we know this, especially with that cross. But what he doesn't have is speed. He's very slow. Almeida's very fast, twitch dominant, very fast, looking for takedowns. Realistically, on paper, you might think that he should win this. I don't think he will. I think Blaydes has just got too much power. Almeida's chin, it's very, we don't really know about it yet. It's suspect when I look at his record. I don't want to just base it off that, but I do think that Blaydes is going to get this second round knockout as Almeida's getting tired from struggling to get the takedowns and not being on top of him. Right, Petr Yan versus Song Yadong. Who am I going with to win the fight? I am going with Yan, and I'm not just saying it because of the name. Petr Yan is still one of the best bantamweights out there. The problem is, he's either been on the end of a wrong decision, in your opinion, or he's having a fight that's very close and just losing. Song Yadong is looking better each fight. His takedown defense is so good. I don't believe Petr Yan's going to look to take him down in the fight. I think he's going to go out there and box with him. But the only thing I worry about in this fight, and I'm going to go with a decision. Sorry, my throat. I'm going to go with a decision for for Petr Yan. Because Petr Yan, he does give away the first round, but I do believe in rounds 2 and 3, they're the ones who he's going to win. So 2 and 3, 29-28. And remember, he likes to measure the distance a lot, make his read. And then Song Yadong is a guy who likes to throw very wide from his... sorry, my throat. From his body, and then generate loads of power by doing that. Because if you can bring your arm back and bring it all the way up to the head, you can generate more power than just standing there, just throwing it without any leverage. So Petr Yan's going to measure the distance a lot. And think about it. If you put your hand in front of your opponent, as Song Yadong's loading up to throw the hook, it's going to hit the elbow or part of the shoulder of Petr Yan, and it's kind of going to block on his arms. So I think Song Yadong's going to really struggle. And you could also say leg kicks, but I think Petr Yan knows how to check them. He's trained at Muay Thai kickboxing in Thailand. I don't know what they're called, but Tiger Muay Thai, that's it. And his striking looks good every fight. So I don't think he'll knock out Song Yadong because his boxing and his defense is quite good, especially holding that tight guard. But what I do think he'll be able to do is not mix up the takedowns, like I said. He might get the clinch. I really think he's going to struggle to take him down. He might get a sweep, but I don't think he'll get a double leg or something like that. That's not the type of fight it will be. I think he's going to go out there and just put on a striking clinic with the leg kicks, body shots, and I want to see more knees from him in a fight like this. To the body, when they're in the pocket and clinching. That's what he needs to do. So when Song Yadong's on the outside, bring him into the middle. Right, this one's very hard. This one's very hard to pick. But honestly, I do think Maddalena, please do it, please. Round 1 KO. Or Gilbert Burns is going to submit him in the first round. I think this is going to be a round 1 finish because Jack Maddalena starts off with the jab. He can start off quite slow at times. I know you'll look at first round knockout and be how can he start off slow? I'm talking about it'll be near the end of the first round if he's going to get it. It won't be a first 30 seconds knockout. It will be Burns taking a lot of jabs to the head early, and that is if he decides to strike. But the only thing I get worried about is with Jack Della Maddalena, a lot of opponents who can take him down or will look for takedowns and can get them will get him in a deep submission. Angelusa. Who else was it? I need to quickly look. I can't remember his name. Ramzan Ameev got him in an anaconda on the ground deep. But Jack Della Maddalena always finds a way to survive. Basil Hafiz with some submission attempt. He was getting in them and it's very dangerous. A bit like Mikhaev. But the difference is Maddalena was not a wrestler looking to take people down. Whereas Mikhaev, he gets put in them because he leaves his head wide open. That's not the thing with Maddalena. He's been put in arm triangles, chokes because they're getting him down and they're looking to be offensive whilst he's trying to get up. So Burns has got a very good chance of submitting him. But honestly, I think we know how Gilbert Burns' chin isn't the most durable. He can't really defend against the jab because there isn't enough head movement. He can sometimes be a bit uncomposed at times, in my opinion. When things aren't going well, they don't tend to really get that better. Honestly, they don't. Look at how effective Khamzat Chimaev was with using that jab. Maddalena's jab's way more effective than Chimaev. Chimaev has a lot of power in his jab, but Maddalena can mix it up with volume and with power. With technique. So I think he's going to jab him and eventually he's going to go down like he did against Usman, or he's going to go out there straight away, clinch him, do a Marab approach, and then look for a submission. I hope that don't happen, but Maddalena's another dark horse in the division. If he beats him, imagine he's 17-2 already. It don't look right. Like, we need to be looking at him fighting like your Shavkats eventually. I wanted to see him fight Ian Gary about a year ago, but look at him now. Right, Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page. You know what? I think Kevin Holland's going to KO Michael Venom Page, and I think he will do it in the second round, because one thing I've noticed with Michael Venom Page, I don't know if you remember watching that Logan Storley fight. He got held down the majority of that. I remember watching that live, and he was just getting bullied. There weren't much damage, but the control was so significant, he couldn't do anything. And with Holland, we don't really tend to see him wrestle all the time, but he has got a threat with submissions. But that's not going to work, I don't think, on a guy like Page, because he isn't going to shoot in. It'll depend on how Holland approaches the fight. I will change my pick. If I hear some foolishness about I'm only going to strike and make an agreement like that, well then I think Michael Venom Page has a puncher's chance. Well, no, not a puncher's chance. A chance of winning by a decision. He will not knock out Kevin Holland. Like, you look at the guys he's been fighting in Bellator, they're no good. Douglas Lima gave him a hard fight twice. Like, that fight there, some people would argue Lima won it again. Like, when Page is throwing, he sometimes comes off the floor and is a bit uncoordinated. And that sounds stupid because when you think of him like loose on the toes. But when he goes to throw after bouncing on the toes, he can lose his balance and fall over. And if Kevin Holland can get leg kicks working, I'm telling you, he will be a problem. Because if I take you to the Kevin Holland fight with Jack Della Maddalena, I believe Kevin Holland was throwing a lot of leg kicks, like you can see here. He was throwing a lot of leg kicks in that fight. And I believe in this fight here, he will also be throwing a lot of leg kicks. So a decision is quite likely. But then again, I think it'll be a 29-28 decision split for either one. But that's why I think Kevin Holland is going to KO him. He's got his hands down, bouncing on the toes. You get hit. I know Wonderboy can do it perfectly, but it's him. He's a UFC caliber. We haven't seen Page in the UFC. He's getting old now. And I can't trust him. I can't. I want him to win, but I can't trust him. And I believe he will get KO'd, hands down, getting a bit all excited. The crowd hyping him up. Out cold finish in the second round by a straight right. Right, these are the last two fights on the card. I'm not even joking. I think they're going to be long fights. And I think Dustin Poirier against Benoit and Denis, I still can't believe what I'm seeing. I've got to go with Dustin Poirier. This guy has been fast-tracked. He beat Matt Frivola, which is a good win, by a head kick. He beat Thiago Moises, which is a really underrated win, especially look at the way how he mauled him compared to how Makhachev dealt with him. He looked better against him, but I know styles make fights. But the one fight, I know it's not appearing here, it was the one against Oleksiejczuk Zaleski. I know it was his debut, but he was getting beaten up badly on the feet. And if you look at the opponents he's fought, most of these guys here, Ismail Bonfim, that was impressive. I'll give him that, with the kicking to the body and stuff. But he likes to get takedowns. Thiago Moises, wrestler. Matt Frivola, wrestler, who can strike with good footwork. But I think of him as more of a wrestler, beat Jalen Turner. But Poirier, I was meant to say, I think he's going to do it in round 4. I think it's going to be competitive, but I just don't think Benoit and Denis can beat this guy. And I know we're seeing the older guys in the sport, they can get beat, they're not invincible. And he's coming off a head kick, and you might think, if he's coming off a head kick, and Benoit and Denis landed a head kick against Matt Frivola, there's a high chance he'll do it here. No, because he doesn't really throw a lot of head kicks. It's a lot to the body, not to the head. He might kick the wrist, but not straight to the head, kicking the wrist. And Poirier with his Philly shell, I think he will prepare for this. He got knocked out by a head kick. He'll learn. Poirier was not dumb. And I believe he said he hasn't lost 2 fights in a row, which don't mean anything. But I think the volume that he can put on a guy will be overwhelming. And when he was getting clipped in the corner against Oleksiejczuk Zaleski, I don't know how to pronounce it, there were multiple combinations in the corner. And I've noticed another thing. Benoit and Denis can get countered a lot by counter-strikers, which Oleksiejczuk did in the fight. And Poirier's way better than Oleksiejczuk at countering, way better. And even though he's 35 and Benoit Saint Denis is 28, I think Saint Denis should have been looking at a fight with... I'm not even joking. Look at Jalen Turner first. Because that could be a dangerous matchup with the power he's got if he can't just hug him. Because I doubt Benoit Saint Denis would knock him out. Like, Benoit Saint Denis was never known as a guy who was getting KOs. That's why I don't know where this has come from. Like, ground and pound finish, okay, great, he did that. But I think of him as more of a guy who's got good jiu-jitsu, who likes to wrestle, and can do that on the ground, whose striking has improved. But it's not better than Poirier. And if he decides to strike, which I believe he will, then I believe he'll get knocked out in the 4th round. I think he'll get tired around round 3 because he's not used to going 5 rounds. Like, his finishes, they're coming quite early, to be fair. And the later the fight goes on for Poirier, he will grow in confidence if he's doing well. And even if he's losing the fight. We've seen with Dan Hooker, like, when things aren't going well, he can make a comeback. I'm not sure Benoit Saint Denis can if it gets to that point. And I think we are going to look at either a late finish or a decision. So I do think Poirier's going to come out victorious via KO. And I think it'll be like a flurry of combinations that put him out. Right, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. It doesn't even look like the best fight in this card, but it's the main event, championship fight. You're going to disagree and you might think this is stupid, but I don't think it is. I'm going with Vera, KO. And I'm going to say he will do it in round 4 as well. I think with Marlon Vera, his ability to come back in a fight is very underrated. And he has got a balance like Arsenal. He could take down Sean O'Malley. He'd struggle to do it. But the later the fight goes on, you know with Marlon Vera, he grows in confidence. He's got like power that he shouldn't have at this weight class. He's already knocked out O'Malley. I know O'Malley's going to say, oh, it was my leg. Yeah, it was injured. And he was throwing leg kicks at him. But he's still got knocked out by the ground and pound on the bottom. Whether you want to disagree or not. Which is why I think Marlon Vera will be losing the majority of rounds. But I think he will steal rounds. For example, he's getting outstriked on the feet by like the jab of O'Malley. O'Malley throwing like feints, putting his hand up in the air. Feints towards Marlon Vera, moves around. Marlon Vera's like, he walks you down and he kind of like, he doesn't throw a lot at the start. But when he can find an angle to throw at you, he'll jump in and throw something, whether it's like a Superman jab or like a kick to the leg. He will mix them type of things up. And I believe Sean O'Malley's going to be hitting him with all he can, but he just won't be able to knock him out. So if O'Malley's going to win, it'll be by decision. Like, I know Marlon Vera, I believe, has not been knocked out before. Yeah, he hasn't. In the UFC. And I don't think a guy like Sean O'Malley can do it, despite him knocking out Aljamain. Aljamain Sterling, he was fighting that fight way too aggressive. Like, he rushes people. Marlon Vera kind of takes his time. Like, he's not rushing to, like, knock you out. He'll just walk you down. You hit him, he'll keep coming forward. And it will be a fight where Sean O'Malley's going to be, like, getting cut off because Marlon Vera can cut off the cage. Look at Frankie Edgar. He's walking you down, you're circling away, front kick, out cold. So I do think round 4 or round 5, the finish is going to come for Marlon Vera. And he shouldn't be winning this fight, but it's one of those fights where I think it's a bad matchup. And he has got good leg kicks, and if he can keep kicking the leg of Sean O'Malley, where he needs to use footwork and movement, his leg is going to tire in the later rounds, therefore making his footwork more stationary, less movement, and Marlon Vera is going to be pressuring him each round. He will slow him down, and then that's when the knockout will start to creep up. So, in a weird way, I think Marlon Vera is going to be the new UFC bantamweight champion. It won't last. 100% won't last. Like, Corey Sandhagen was able to just out-wrestle him, and Corey Sandhagen is not a wrestler. Well, you might as well call him balanced now, but he's not a guy you think of who should be going out there doing that back then, but he proved against Rob Font, wrestling is extremely good. Like, people can't get up when he gets people down, and Marlon Vera struggled as well. So, Sean O'Malley's in a weird spot. Like, if he wins it, then we get to see Sean O'Malley against Sandhagen, which I'd like to see. But unfortunately, that's not how life works. I don't think it's fair at times, and This should not happen, but I believe it's going to happen. I'm going with round 4. Marlon Vera, I think, is going to catch him with an overhand as he's getting tired up against the cage and put him out cold. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon. I don't think he's going to win in the grappling department. I think Sean O'Malley can stop the takedowns, but that's not it. He'll get tired. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.